Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll go ahead and call to order the October meeting of the Budget and Audit Committee. First order of business is the approval of the minutes. Sandy sent those out with the invite to this web conference. Does anybody have any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, we'll just approve them as submitted. Move on to business. Item A, an update. You know, one of the things we've been doing is tracking our revenue projections for FY21. Bobby, I've got some spreadsheets here. One that was sent out by your office and another from Lori's office on sales tax and hotel tax. Can you give us just a quick overview of where we're at on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So local sales tax collection for the first quarter are about $304,000 above what they were last year. That's about a 5% increase. Compared to budget, from an annual budget standpoint, we would hope to be at about 25% of our annual sales tax budget at this point in the year, and we're at almost 32%. So sales tax up both from the prior year and compared to our budget projections as well. On hotel motel tax, again, we're performing better than what we had budgeted for. Hoping to be at 25% of our annual budget. We're at about 42% of our annual budget. So better than we had projected in our budget, and down about 26% from the prior year, from the quarter last year.
Okay. Yeah, so we've seen, you know, for sales tax, we've seen that for this fiscal year perform better than our assumptions were coming into it. The same with hotel motel tax. I think we're optimistic that the trend, the rebound trend that we've seen on hotel motel tax will continue. This previous month, where we had been as low as 60% under the previous year, this year we were less than 1% under the previous year. The tail of the tape, I think, will be through the winter, seeing how we track through that. Typically, the winter months are a little bit slower, with the exception of October. Lori, I don't know if last year and the previous year, it looks like October seems to be the biggest winter month we have, or fall month. Could you speak a little bit to that, on what your office is seeing moving forward on the next couple of months?
I would say you're right on about that. I think we'll have a bigger success in October because of the Sportsplex activity in the large tournament. But yes, we will start to drop in November, December, January. February are typically our slowest months, and then from March on, it usually picks up at a much higher velocity. So okay. I would say we'll hopefully, if we can maintain this, we will be pleased with those numbers.
All right. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me pull my agenda back up here. Any questions on our revenue projections from the group? And this will be something we'll continue to monitor on a month in and month out basis, and try to focus on any trends that we see. Moving on to item B, you know, one of the things that we set out this year, with this year especially being an unknown as far as budgeting is concerned, we wanted to do quarterly budget reviews. So Mr. Arnold sent out a number of spreadsheets and a Word document with some of his notes. I distributed those last night, but Mr. Arnold, I'll turn it over to you to run through that, and you just tell me what spreadsheet you like to pull up, and I'll make sure that everybody can view that.
Okay, happy to do that. We did distribute yesterday, I believe, 3 documents, a summary of the financial results for the major funds, then a more detailed document by fund, and then finally a document that had some informational notes. Paul, this morning, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see it, but
I do. I've got it up here, but I can send that out to everyone after this meeting.
okay, that'll be fine. I think what I would recommend that we do is let me direct most of my comments to the summary financial results, major funds
Okay.
spreadsheet, Paul. And the document that I prepared earlier today that I was a little late sending out to Paul will kind of parallel my comments here and lay it out a little bit closer, a little bit clearer for everyone. We've had a successful first quarter financially. Our financial results that would be both compared to budget expectations as well as compared to the prior year. I will reference some of the budget variances as we go through this. I will probably focus most of my comments primarily this first quarter this year compared to the first quarter last year, simply because there are some restrictions with the way our budget system works. We'll be looking at annual numbers, and that's is not sometimes not as helpful as it could be. But I'll begin with the general fund comments. Our first quarter revenue, so this will be July through September, were $12.7 million. That is an improvement over the first quarter last year of $9.8 million, so about a $2.8 million increase in revenues for the first quarter. I would offer the following explanation, kind of top level observation about this. There's about $1.6 million in various local taxes that contribute to this increase. Local sales tax, we've talked about that already. City beer tax, wholesale liquor tax, all of those revenue line items were up materially. The biggest increase was actually in business tax. And some of this would be attributable to a timing issue. You may remember that back in, I guess, March, April timeframe, the state extended the deadline on business tax collections. So some of this positive variance is related to that. And the one line item on the various taxes locally that we're trailing the prior year, but obviously doing better than we had budgeted for, would be the hotel tax that we discussed earlier. Another revenue category that's up for the first quarter for the general fund would be state shared taxes. It's up a total of about $1.8 million. It's primarily in two areas. One would be state shared sales tax. And this information that I'm speaking from now, Paul will distribute it after the meeting. I wish I'd got this to you a little bit earlier, but state shared sales tax, and the other revenue category from the state would be gasoline taxes. In total, those are up about $1.8 million for the first quarter. One important note related to this, and this is addressed in the footnotes document. Governmental funds operate on what's called a modified accrual basis. Most of you on the call are business people, and this is not a full accrual basis of accounting. It's somewhere between a cash basis of accounting and a full accrual basis of accounting, and it's called a modified accrual basis of accounting. I can get into that a little bit more if people have questions. The point today, though, is that in the past, the city has been, I would say, inconsistent in complying with this modified accrual basis of accounting. Sometimes appropriate accruals were made, other times they weren't. We're moving this fiscal year to be in compliance with that comptroller-driven method of accounting for governmental funds. I say all of that just to tell you that when you look at these state shared revenues, this increase of 1.8 million, about half of that, or $900,000, is a difference in the accrual methodology from last year to this year. So those revenues are up regardless of the accrual issue. But you should note that about half of that 1.8 million is related to last year, the accruals were not recorded.
Okay.
That makes sense to everybody. We also had a payment from public entity partners, a dividend. They're our risk management insurance partner that was not budgeted, of about $80,000. And then we have three revenue categories where we're trailing the prior year. The most significant one would be the property tax category. That's down about $535,000 from the first quarter last year. I do think this is a timing issue, and as best we can determine so far in our research, this would be attributable to the fact that the 2020 tax notices were mailed to the taxpayers about 2 weeks later this year than they were last year. The process to get those tax notices out is quite involved, beginning with the local property assessor's office and then the State Department of Revenue. They have to do a lot of work to reconcile everything. And then when they finally release the tax rolls to us, which was delayed this year by a couple of weeks, we think that's primarily work processes resulting from the COVID impact. But once we get them, there's another process where we have to work with our vendor to get the tax notices printed and mailed. And you look at all of that in aggregate, and it was about 2 weeks later this year than it was last year. So at this point, I really don't have any reason to believe that our property tax collections will not reach the goals that we had projected, which is about a 97% collection rate. I think we've just gotten off to a little bit of a slow start due to that mailing issue, and possibly people considering maybe historically they've come to City Hall to pay their taxes. This year they may be trying to figure out, do I do that online or do I do that through the mail? I will tell you, Madison County's experienced the same thing that we've experienced so far as well. There were a couple of other small categories. Tax equivalent payments for the quarter, they're down about $66,000. However, I've looked at this. This is strictly a timing issue. JEA remits those payments monthly. We received the September payment the first week in October, so that will correct itself. But I will tell you, in total, despite that timing difference, JEA tax equivalent payments for the first quarter are down slightly from what they were the prior year. And then finally, the other unfavorable variance would be building department related revenues. And I hadn't had a chance to talk to our building, Greg and others, but it's down about $65,000 from the first quarter last year. So those are the major positive and negative variances. And in total, we've got a positive revenue increase over the first quarter last year of about $2.8 million. Remember, probably about $900,000 of that is the accrual issue. So if you back that out, still somewhere around $2 million. That's compared to the prior year. And recognizing the timing of our property tax collections compared to our annual budget, we would, in total, we're somewhere around 17 and 18% of our annual revenue budget through the first quarter, where we would expect to be at 25%, but that 25% obviously includes property taxes. So I think when you look at it compared to budget, very favorable numbers as well. So on the expense side, very quickly, for the general fund, expenses for the first quarter were $14.3 million. That's 19% of our annual expense budget. Again, remember, we would like to be no more than 25%. The lower, the better. So that's a favorable number. And when you look at expenses for the first quarter compared to last year, first quarter actual, we're down about right at $1 million, $986,000 in expenses, down this year from the first quarter last year. That's about 6.5%. Very quickly, some of the primary areas where we're down in terms of broad categories: public safety is about $430,000 below the budget. public facilities. Of course, many of them have been closed for the first quarter. They're about $392,000 below their expense budget. Recreation about $146,000, Public Works about $145,000. General government was actually right at the prior year's expense level, so it's kind of flat. And we did have one area in terms of expense category that was higher than the first quarter for the prior year. That would be park facilities. It was up about $115,000, but everyone should know that's almost 100% attributable to the fact that we have reclassified the Sportsplex operation from a separate fund into the general fund this year. So the Sportsplex is in the general fund expense structure this year, not in it last year. So is that a pretty good summary of the general fund? Okay.
Yeah, Bobby. So the park facilities that we're accounting for the upkeep of the Sportsplex now within the general fund, and that line item is taking on those costs.
That's correct.
Okay.
So compared to budget, compared to the prior year, a very favorable month for the general fund. Very quickly on the solid waste fund, again, favorable results compared to both budget and the prior year. I would note and remind everyone, expenses are compared to the prior year for the solid waste fund are about 20% below the prior year. But remember, effective July 1, we redirected some expenses that previously had been in the solid waste fund to the general fund more appropriately. And debt service fund, just one comment there. Really, just to remind everyone as we move through this year, we had a large refunding last October 2019, along with a $6 million debt issue. So some of these comparisons compared to the prior year as we move through the year on the debt service fund are not to take into consideration the impact particularly of the refunding issue. And then finally, one quick comment on capital outlay fund. When you look at the revenues for the first quarter this year, that includes the $1.5 million state grant that the governor approved. And of course, we plan on using that for street resurfacing.
Okay. Any questions from the group for Mr. Arnold? If as we move through this and talking with Ron, I saw you click your mic on there. You got a question?
I didn't get those spreadsheets of those numbers that you said you sent yesterday. So if you don't mind, when you send this other spreadsheet, to make sure I get those as well. That's all. Thank you,
Sure.
Mr. Arnold.
I'll make a note to make sure you get them. As we move, as we continue to do this over the coming year, we're going to continue to refine the way that we deliver this information. So if there's if you see areas that you feel like we need to be looking at as we move at this, please let Mr. Arnold or myself know, and we'll continue to refine these reports as we kind of continue through the year.
Hey, Paul, if I could just add two comments. One of the documents that we sent out yesterday, it has more detail than the summary sheet that we just got through talking about. So I do encourage everyone to review that, look at the notes, and if you have questions, call me. And then finally, I know internally one of the things that I want to accomplish pretty soon, we have some limits with our current core financial system in terms of being able to report out. So really the only way we kind of have to be able to look at expenses now is really at the departmental level, where there could be value, let's just say, in looking at salaries or employee benefits or supplies or utilities or some other type of expense category, sort of citywide, rather than it be, just at the department level. So we're working to try to figure out how to roll that up and look at that as well.
Yeah.
But
So right,
please call me.
yeah. So right now, what Mr. Arnold's speaking about is it's a manual process to go through and compile for example, salaries or benefits. And so one of the things that we've been discussing in our innovation committee is some software to help us be able to compile those in a more automated way rather than a manual way. Let's see. Yep. All right. Item C for next year's budget calendar discussion. In our previous meeting, we had talked about kind of a city council and mayor's office planning session. Having some preliminary discussions with Mr. Arnold and Alex and the mayor. I think we're looking to do that sometime in November or early December. And what we hope to achieve there is to sit down the council and really just have some discussions about what are some citywide goals and objectives, and start to put some planning together on how in the next budgeting cycle we can establish those goals and objectives and align our budget to that. So next month, I'm hopeful that we can get that together, or if not, early in the month of December. That'll really set us up as a good kind of kickoff for the budgeting timeline to start in January. Any other comments to that, Mr. Arnold?
No, that's sounds like what the plan is. So look forward to doing it.
Bobby, could you quickly give us an update on where we are on the external audit?
Sure, I'll be happy to do that. Talked with Matt Woods from ATA day before yesterday. They have spent a significant amount of time on site, and they have been working off site as well. All reports I received from ATA are positive regarding the audit so far, as well as the timeline to complete the audit and report out. So they're actually going to be back on site tomorrow. So I may know more after tomorrow, but so far everything's positive and good news. So it's gone well.
Thank you. Moving on to any questions about the external audit before we move on? Mayor, could you give us an update on the internal auditor position?
Yeah, I think they interviewed candidates. Bobby, was that Friday, Thursday? One of those days last week. We had a committee. We had some accountants, external accountants, Bobby and our HR department do the interviews. Great candidates, and right now we are in the process of doing the reference checks on one of the candidates that seemed to be the consensus candidate. And so once those reference checks get completed, then we'll be prepared to submit an offer to the candidate.
Thank you. I know that's something that we've been working on for a number of months now. So as we get into getting that person and having them on board, which I'm sure will be a significant process to get them up to speed, but hopefully here after the first of the year, we'd like them to come and be a part of this meeting. But after the first of the year, to start working with them maybe in that first quarter and developing an audit plan for the coming year.
Yeah, so the candidate that we're going to submit the offer to indicated that they would prefer with the company they've been with a 4-week notice. And so hopefully we can get those reference checks done by the end of this week, provide the offer start of next week, and then that way get them in here by the start of December.
Great. Any questions for the mayor's office or Mr. Arnold concerning the internal audit position?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, this is Ron. I just wanted with the candidates and everything, with you and the committee, were you all pleased with the candidates that came forth and the opportunities to facilitate the things that we're trying to, of course, improve upon from a budgeting standpoint?
I'll let Bobby answer that. I wasn't in on the interviews. I did one round of interviews several months ago, and then quickly realized that we needed people with expertise in that area to ask those questions. So that's why we got the group with external folks, Bobby, and so I'll let him answer that.
Sure. Good question, Ron. I think the answer to that is yes. There were 4 applicants that were, I guess, in this second round or final round of interviews. All 4 were good applicants in their own way. I think two of the applicants were probably a little, I think the consensus of the interview group, 2 of the applicants were probably a little stronger and more qualified than a couple of the others, although they were all 4 very good. And when you look at the 2 final applicants, both of them were excellent. And I think the consensus candidate, their particular work experience may have been a little bit more pertinent to what we're looking for. But the candidates were very strong, very good.
Thank you. Any other discussion on internal audit position? Moving on to item F, Citizen Legible Budget Balancing Act, which is the software that we're using this year for that. We finished up the budget simulation and the taxpayer receipt, and there's links to those in the agenda. There's also, I believe I saw yesterday evening, that we also have links to those on the city's website.
They're both on the city's website underneath budget and in the hamburger menu.
Let's see here. So on your phone, it's in under the hamburger on the desktop under government. You can come down to budget and use the budget simulator or the taxpayer receipt. I went through the exercise. I asked Mr. Arnold to help me with this too yesterday. Go through here, and now that we've received our tax notices, it's an interesting exercise to put in what the value of your home is and to see how close we are. Mine, the estimate was within a percentage, within 1%. So I feel like that's accurate enough to give an estimate on what your taxes are. But you know, it's really informative to kind of come in here and as quickly as you can go through this. Let's just say, what's the median household? Oh, not that.
150 probably.
Is it 150?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So you can see fairly quickly that you can do this. So I'll be, you know, I'd encourage everyone to share this, you know, on social media, and let's get the word out about this tool. I think it'll, the goal of this is to start some discussion, not only with the tax receipt tool, but also with the city budgeting software and the budget simulation portion of this. The way that I'm viewing that is an open working document. And so as we continue to work through these goal setting meetings with the city council and start to initiate the budget process in January, we hope to be able to identify some areas of interest that we may want to dive deeper into and have some citizen feedback on. And so we'll adjust the budget simulation to reflect those goals and objectives once we've had those established and have some alignment at the council and mayor's office level. But feel free to share. It's public now. We felt like it was time. I'd fiddled with it enough, and we felt like it was time to go ahead and get it out there to everybody and let you guys start experimenting with it. Any questions on the citizen legible budget? If not, we'll move on to item G for the Innovation Committee update. As Mr. Arnold alluded to earlier, we've got a small working group that's working through some software issues and as it's pertinent to the city, as well as looking at more of our core financial software and how our other secondary and tertiary software plugs into that. And so coming up, I guess that would be the 10th of November. We have a demo with OpenGov. I believe 11:15 was the time that we would start running through kind of our budgeting portion of that software. And so I'm not really sure what that looks like, but I'd like to invite all of you to attend that. And what I'm proposing is, in lieu of a meeting next month, that we have that we try to get as many of us on that web call as we can to view the software and to make comments. So that'll be November the 10th at 11:15, and I'll send out the login information to everybody. Any questions about that? And that kind of rolls me into to item H, setting a regular time. Mr. Arnold and I discussed this a week or so ago. What I'd like to go ahead and do now that we've gotten through some of the hurdles that we had last year, and we're kind of getting on a pace this year, is set a regular time. I know that would help a number of you just to go ahead and have that on your schedule. What we're looking at is the second Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. That's a good time in the month where we've got enough information from the previous month. We've gotten through a city council meeting, and we can go ahead and have some consideration of things that may need to be on that month's the coming month's city council meeting, and it doesn't put us in a bind in terms of consideration where we're considering something on the same day of the agenda review, and it may be a month before we could get that on there. So we'll look to move that to that second Thursday of the month at 11. For this coming month, the month of November, that OpenGov demo happens to hit on that second Thursday. So we'll do that in lieu of the meeting. Any questions about any of the business follow-up that we've had today?
Hey, Paul, just asking, didn't know if it would be too much from an administrative standpoint, but it would be awesome if we set this regular meeting time and send out either a Google Calendar invite or Outlook invite. I use both, and it does help me to keep everything in streamlined so I can say no when I need to say no and yes when I need to. Didn't know if that would be a possibility, or am I being too much of a
No, I don't think so. I think we can get an Outlook invite sent out, and I'll work with Sandy to make sure that we get a reoccurring invitation sent out to everybody on a monthly basis.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, questions, comments, concerns? If not, we'll adjourn. I appreciate everybody's time time today, and have a good rest of your week. And I'll see some of you later this afternoon, and see some of you here on November the 10th. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.